What's up everyone, welcome back to a brand new Resident Evil Village DLC discussion video. Today, we're going to be looking at Donna Beneviento. I think I pronounced it right. But we're going to be going over some DLC ideas for her and how they could all be kind of psychological or horror themed. This is the most promising area you could do horror for. Again, with these Lord DLCs, they are probably best suited for pre-game events, you know, what happened to them up to the point of the game's events, you know, what happened to them before Ethan turned up and, you know, the whole story went down. And there's a lot of avenues you could go down with Donna in terms of herself and, you know, ideas that have come up through the concept art for the character that Capcom released in the Trauma Pack for Village. But yeah, before we get started though, I do want to mention a couple things to do with the channel. First things first, we reached 500 subscribers recently, which is honestly still mind-blowing. Like, I expected to reach that at the end of the year, not within a month of me setting the goal. But it's done, and for that I kind of want to do something with more of you. What is that going to be? I have 3 ideas. One will be kind of us all coming together and trying to fill a lobby in Umbrella Corps and playing together. One would be sitting one weekend doing a big stream and going through chapters of RE5 with some of you. Again, it's still PlayStation, so if you're on PlayStation, there's an opportunity. And then the other would be to do the same thing, but on Resistance, where we jump into a 4-man pre-made and try and win some games against some masterminds. I just kind of want to do something with all of you that have turned up and supported the videos recently, but when that's going to be, I'm not too sure. I'll make a video about it within a week, and then we kind of organise the time. Probably at a weekend, probably best for everyone. And it'll probably be like at night time, because then obviously more of you are awake and active and stuff like that because of time regions. But yeah, we're going to do like a big thing within a week or two, just kind of a big thank you kind of stream and stuff like that. So one more thing I need to quickly add. There is a new kind of series I'm working on. And it's kind of it's not a time, well, it's kind of a time thing actually, but it's coming along quite nicely. The first episode of it should be out within a week or two. Just kind of editing it all together now, doing some research to make sure I get everything right. And what it's going to be is essentially looking at the mainline cast of Resident Evil in general, and kind of looking at, you know, where they entered into the game and the events all the way up to their latest appearance, and, you know, maybe then discussing, you know, where they could re-enter into the game series, you know. And kind of discussing, you know, one character in general throughout the entire video, how they started in the game, where they are now, how they got there, and then potential future appearances. It's pretty interesting. It's something I've wanted to do for a while, to kind of talk about all of the lore of the games, stuff like that, around certain characters. But yeah, the first one should be out in a week or two. So if that's anything that's interesting anyone, be sure to keep an eye out for that within the coming weeks. And in terms of the 500 kind of subscriber celebration thing, let me know which one of those options sounds appealing. It could be, you know, do you want to play Umbrella Corps, or we could all jump into Resident Evil 5 and do a stream and kind of switch out between chapters, or, you know, we could all jump into a 4-man pre-made and Resistance, or it could even be Dead by Daylight, you know, because I do play that quite a lot and I do stream it occasionally. So let me know which option sounds the best, and within a week we'll make a video and kind of settle on which one it's going to be. But without any further ado, we'll jump into the Donna video, breaking down some DLC ideas and seeing what they could do with her in the future. Okay, so first up, this is an interesting one. Originally, with Donna's part of the game, it was not just going to be her, it was going to be her entire family, and they were more of like a, instead of being dolls and creepy baby things in basements, it was going to be more of a ghost house type thing. And I think that would be pretty cool. A way they could do this would be have the backstory in, and obviously Donna is the only one left alive at the end, because I think from the backstory, I think most of them ended up killing themselves. I'm not too sure, but either way, have Donna be like the sole survivor, and then her dip into what, you know, what trauma she has could be the sight of these like ghostly figures around the house. It could be kind of a spooky DLC, and also kind of an emotional DLC. You know, it could deal with her past a bit more prominently, you know, with the trauma of it all and stuff like that. Because people like the character, you know, she's not in the game too much, especially if you manage to speedrun the entire sequence. But out of all the lords in the game, people have the most empathy for her as a backstory, and they can really explore that in some ways. It could be psychological, could be spooky, but I feel like she's the best avenue to go down when it comes to horror, because her whole segment in the game is spooky. So her whole vibe in the game should be spooky as well. Again, it's all ideas, but I do feel if they go along the same kind of lines as Resident Evil 7 in terms of DLC, that at least one of them should be some kind of horror. And you know, what better character to do that with than Donna and her whole backstory with her family. Another way you could portray some kind of horror aspect into a potential Donna DLC is kind of going a step back to before her family were ghosts and they were all alive. Again, think back to the Daughters DLC for 7, where they introduced Evelyn into the house, and then you watched as it all kind of, you know, unraveled around them. Maybe, you know, there was a reason behind Donna's family doing what they did, and you can kind of witness that. Maybe there's some kind of presence in the house, maybe it's something to do with Miranda and the mold and the Marcy and stuff like that. Maybe she tried to experiment on the entire family and it didn't work. You know, again, this is all kind of brainstormed ideas, but like I've mentioned already, you know, Donna is probably the ideal character to kind of suit a horror themed expansion around, and it can be done for the others, don't get me wrong. Like, I think I've mentioned a Dimitrescu horror type DLC where you're playing as someone trying to escape the castle, like the Maiden demo, but a bit more in depth, you know, more puzzles, more scares. Obviously Maiden demo was more of a tech demo just to show what the game looked like, but they could really take that idea and like one up it, so to speak. So that could be done anywhere, but I honestly do feel like that house, just remembering that house and how spooky it is, and you know, the environment it's in and how empty it is and stuff like that. Yeah, it's such a good setting for a horror themed expansion or DLC. So she's probably the ideal candidate to kind of base it around, even if she's not even meant in the DLC and it's just based around the house. Like, what if, okay, another idea that's loosely based off of, you know, RE7. Let's look back at the very beginning of Resident Evil 7's announcement with the beginning hour demo and the Sewer Gators videotape. You know, a ghost hunting crew went to the house, you know, and they eventually got picked off by Jack. But if you remember with the demo, there was like split frames of a ghost kind of watching you in the demo, and it was creepy. But just imagine that, like, obviously this village, it isn't set in like the past because it's just a confined village. What if someone, you know, some people stumbled upon this house that was empty, and then some kind of presence in the house? Obviously it would be kind of Donna and Angie and stuff like that, but what if some unknown kind of entity in the house picked off these people? And it could be filmed in the same way, you know, like through a camera crew or, you know, ghost hunters and stuff like that. Like, it's an interesting way to do it, personally, and I feel like all of the horror potential is with that character and with that background and with the location. I don't know. Again, it's all brainstormed, it's all ideas I've personally thought of, but you know, you have the success of the beginning hour demo and some of the DLC for 7 and 7 itself to kind of reference some ideas. Like, what I mean with 7 itself is just the brief part of the game where you go through Evelyn's room to find the arm you need for the cure, and like things are being thrown around, things are moving on their own, things are like changing, and then obviously you turn around after you find the arm and Evelyn's kind of stood there watching, and he disappears when you run out, you know, stuff like that. Personally, for me, in terms of horror games, the best kind of spooks you can do, jump scares are cool and they can be really, really good if done right, but the best things for me are when you think you almost convince yourself that something is gonna happen at any point and it just doesn't. Like, that's the best for me. Like, it builds the tension. It builds and builds and builds and then just nothing. Or it builds and builds and builds and nothing happens for a minute, and then just when you think it's calm again, then the shit hits the fan. Like, that's the best kind of horror for me. But obviously their decision, and I just feel like, you know, these ideas are kind of my own ideas, and I would love to hear the thoughts of everyone's opinions on them down below. But that has been the kind of DLC ideas for Donna's portion of potential DLC. Moreau will be next. This is probably the more difficult one of the bunch, purely because there is a bit known about him background wise that I do want to go into with DLC, because obviously, like I've mentioned a million times in these videos, the best DLC for the Lords, I would think, is pre-game events, because we know what happens to them in the game, so doing anything during the game is a waste of time. But yeah, Moreau's next. Interesting character, believe it or not. People do think he's the least favourite of the bunch, and I understand it. But even the backstory for him is quite intense. So we'll get into that in a couple of days. Again, just a brief touch on the mentions I kind of talked about at the beginning of the video. Let me know what kind of 500 subscriber special thing we should do. If anyone can think of anything different, just throw some ideas out. It's all fun at the end of the day. And then obviously for the series that's coming up soon, it is being worked on in my spare time, aside from uploading videos constantly. But it should be out, hopefully first episode in a week or two, and then they'll kind of follow the same pattern. There'll be one of those once a week or once every 2 weeks, because it is a time sink. They're longer videos than normal, they're like half hour each, maybe a bit longer. But yeah, just something I thought I'd mention. But anyway, leave your thoughts on Donna's DLC down below, and I'll see you all tomorrow for a brand new video.